Hello and welcome to the Dialogue Box. I'm Gwen Frey and I'm here today with Freya Holmer.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, it's so good to have you here. I'm a huge fan of yours. I've been watching your stuff on Twitch, on your Twitter gifs for a while. For people who don't know, Freya is I believe you're the solo creator of Shader Forge, right?
Yes, I am.
And also from there, you founded a company, I think, and made budget cuts and a bunch of other stuff.
Hmm.
So this is really exciting. I've never, we've never had the opportunity to meet. I've always wanted to get to know you. How did this start? How did Shader Forge come together?
So Shader Forge started out when kind of around the time when I switched from Unreal Engine to Unity. So when I came to Unity, I was kind of looking for their material editor. How do you make shaders in Unity? But there was no way to make shaders in Unity without coding, right? And I never coded shaders before. So I was looking into that, and there seemed to be like an old plugin called Strumpy Shader Editor, which didn't work for the version of Unity that I was using. It was kind of deprecated and abandoned. And that was way before Unity had their own shader graph. So there was this gap in, the workflow of Unity where there was just no way to make shaders with a node-based editor. For me, I was just sad going into Unity because, where's my material editor? It doesn't
Yeah.
exist. So I sort of had to learn how to make shaders, how to code shaders by hand, write everything from scratch, which uh, which even after I learned how to do that, even after I could make things with it, I felt that, well, this is still not really a good workflow.
Yeah.
In a node-based editor, you can make things very rapidly. You slap in a Fresnel node, you multiply that by something, and then you add a color, and then you have a property. But if you want to do all that stuff in a node-based editor, or do that in code, then that's going to take so much longer because the Fresnel node has a lot of implications for what you
Yeah.
need in order to use that node. Then it's like, oh, you need a view vector, you need a normal vector, you need to pass it from the vertex shader to the fragment shader, and yada yada, right? And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just like, oh gosh, there's so much boilerplate. Why do I need to write this, right?
Oh my
Uh,
God. And you're coming from Unreal. Honestly, the material editor in Unreal is amazing.
yeah,
In
yeah.
Unity, when you do shaders, is it in HLSL or is it in C Sharp? I don't know anything about Unity.
So Unity does HLSL, yes.
Okay, cool.
It's sort of you're kind of coding in something called CG, but it's so similar to HLSL that the distinction doesn't really matter. But yeah, you do HLSL in Unity.
Oh, dude, I have so many stories about stuff. Like, you can do something in Unreal where you can put an HLSL node and you can
Mhm.
like paste code in there.
Oh,
Uh,
you get like one function or something?
yeah, and I think at one point, so I don't know anything about shaders, right? Like, this is the side of tech art I don't do, and so I think at one point I found some HLSL that would blur. Like, I found a
Mhm.
function of blur and I pasted that into a node, and then I just copy pasted that node 3 times because I wanted it to blur more, and I
Yeah.
managed to just like tank the frame rate for the game I was working on like a really
Yeah.
nice machine, which is just so yeah. Anyway,
Was
that's
that
a
in a single shader that you did that for?
in a single yeah. I just
And was it like in two directional, like both vertically and horizontally, or?
I well it was kind of I think it was horizontally.
Okay,
Well
gotcha.
yeah. So I was just like I piped the thing. Basically, I had the output for the shader and I piped it into a blur node. And then I just copy pasted that blur node 4 times. And I just kept piping it because I'm like, that'll make
Oh,
it blur more. And it
hold
worked.
on. Did it blur the entire input
Yeah,
of your?
it was a post proc material, I believe.
Oh, okay. Oh, gotcha. It was post-process. Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I thought it like copied your entire node network and then did that for the blur, which would be pretty expensive generally.
Yeah, I mean, if you, so long as you don't do anything with HLSL, like the material editor is pretty careful about being like, you have this many instructions, you're not going to fuck
Yeah,
things up.
yeah,
Whereas in, like, I love Unreal. I would totally hate this.
mhm.
And so, okay, so you saw this, there was this need because you needed
Yes,
a node
exactly.
and you,
And especially, I was also doing like I was supervising students on projects at a game design school in Stockholm, who had also done the same switch that I did. They just switched from Unreal to Unity. And I just saw the anguish of all the artists of like, where is my material editor? God damn it, Unity sucks. It's so bad. There's no way to make things pretty. Everything's ugly. Because that is kind of what happens if you don't have the tools to make things pretty, right?
yeah,
Uh, and that was frustrating to me because I knew that you can make things and look pretty in both Unreal and in Unity. It just so happens that Unreal is so much better for artists, or at least very much used to be.
I would still say
still
that.
is.
Yeah, like I think the general consensus is that most people who artists love Unreal, programmers hate it, just because what's going on under the hood. But I, like I work entirely in Blueprint, so I love it. I think it's perfect. Why did you switch to Unity?
I think the first time I switched to Unity was because we had to at school. That was the first time I was introduced to it. But then that was during the time of, let's see, that was before Unreal Engine 4. And Unreal Engine 3 or UDK was like, it was not super great for like starting from scratch. And there was like this Unreal script, which was kind of weird. Whereas on the Unity side, you kind of start from scratch. And you code in C#, which is a very like simple and natural and useful language that it was a nice transition for me because I'd used Java before and it's very similar to Java. So yeah, it was just much more accessible. You kind of start from scratch. Whereas in UDK, it's just you have this really weird esoteric language with very sparse documentation and no forum threads that you're going to find if you search for anything. And when you press play in the editor, you like spawn with a dude with a model and you have like a link gun from Unreal Tournament. It's like, why? I just want an empty scene. Where's my, start from scratch button? So back then, it was mostly because Unity sort of allowed you to start from scratch.
Yeah, the ease of use, like the on-ramp was a lot better, I would say.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so
you were in college when you wrote Shader Forge, or am I understanding this?
Let's see, I never went to college or university.
I'm sorry.
So let's see, I went from high school to this like short vocational education. It was like 2 years long, like 1 year education and then 1 year like internship.
I see.
So it's like a really short like game design education. So that's sort of what introduced me to a lot of like game design stuff, which I'm not actually super interested in anymore. But yeah, so that was what I did then. And, met a lot of people in the industry, and many of my classmates are now in the industry. So yeah, that was like super useful.
I see.
But yeah, and then sorry, I was going to loop back to Shader Forge.
Yeah, do it.
Anyway, so the same school I studied at, that's the school where I also did the supervising later. But yeah, so all of the art students were sad because there was no material editor in Unity, and that kind of like inspired me to do it, like start writing it and seeing like, okay, how do you make editor plugins in Unity? How does that work? And because now it was not only that I wanted to make a shader editor for others, it was also like I want a shader editor. I want to have that material editor in Unity. I got started on that, and then slowly it became something that started being useful, and going through all of the things I need to learn in order to make Shader Forge was like extremely useful, because I need to cover like all the ground like shaders cover, sort of. So that was really, really interesting. And yeah, so we had like I ran like an open beta on, I think I had a thread on PolyCount where there were a lot of artists who started using it, so I got a ton of feedback on that, and then started iterating from there.
That's awesome. So how long ago was that? When did you, give me a rough idea of the timeline here.
When was Shader Forge? 2015, I think.
Okay.
2014, 2015, somewhere.
And I know, I saw that it's open source. Was it always open source, or was that kind of like a new thing?
It's open source now. So it was, let's see, it was sold for a long time. So I think for 4 years or something like that. So I sold it on the Unity Asset Store. And given that, like, I was kind of lucky in the fact that there was a massive gap in the market for a shader editor. And it's kind of a big undertaking. So there's not a whole lot of people who even attempt to do that. And even though Shader Forge is kind of like shoddily put together, and I hate my code there now, it worked and people needed it. So so I put it up on the Unity Asset Store, and I think at the time I sold it for $90. And in total, or like throughout the whole development, or throughout the whole, while it was on sale, it sold for like 2 full-time salaries throughout the whole thing. Which I think is probably pretty rare on the Asset Store. But again, it was really needed. Like this tool, a lot of people wanted this. So I think I was super lucky in the timing of it as well. So given that, that kind of allowed us to start Meat Corporation. So that's how that studio got started, because now we have funding, right? So yeah.
Interesting. So let's start with, you said we, because I thought
Mhm.
Shader Forge was your initiative initially, right?
Yes.
You brought in a partner, I'm taking, at some point to help you with the
Uh,
code, or like a business
yeah.
partner?
I started Meat Corporation together with someone who was at the same school as me.
Uh-huh.
So I started with Jenny Nordenberg, who also happens to be my ex. That's a long story I could go into. But yeah, so we started that together, and yeah, so that's been going on, and it's still going on, and I still work there.
Yeah.
So we started out wanting to make a game called Flowstorm, which was like this weird 2D side-scrolling racing game, which is like a weird little idea that I started back when I was at the game design school, but never really properly made it. So we kind of like started doing that, but then we went to GDC, and we sort of like accidentally bumped into people from Valve, and that was right around the time when they were going to release their HTC Vive, or not release, but rather they were giving out dev kits. So we actually managed to get like a really like early dev kit for the Vive, which was amazing, because that was when VR started becoming interesting, because it was now good. It wasn't shit, and it was pretty good resolution, and things look pretty crisp, not fully crisp, of course, but yeah, and the technology was like, it's really there. So that kind of got us on the path of starting to develop the first prototype for budget cuts.
Cool. That's awesome. Okay. So, all right. And then Budget Cuts was well, it was pretty successful, right? Like that release. I mean, I've heard of it,
Let's
so
see.
I don't know how we define success.
Yeah, it's actually really difficult to define success here, because we released an early demo of Budget Cuts, and that demo was extremely like well regarded and successful. I was just surprised, because generally, like, my experience with having people try your game, it seems like a lot of the responses are like, it's pretty good, but it's not my type of game, or whatever. Like, that's a pretty common response. But for Budget Cuts, like, I'm not even kidding, it was like 99% positive. I barely remember any negative feedback. I got like maybe 2 people who I remember had a negative reaction to it, but otherwise it was just people were blown away. And I don't know if it was like, oh, it's because it's new technology, it's new with VR and everything. But people felt that Budget Cuts took a pretty big step forward within the space of VR, at least. So that was just amazing. I'd never like experienced so much like people who just love it, which
Yeah.
was like, it was really fun, but it was also terrifying, because we were sort of like not entirely sure what we were doing right, and because we didn't get any feedback on like what we should keep or fix, or like, yeah.
Well, that's the exciting thing about VR, especially when you got in. There's no rules yet. Like nobody's
Exactly,
figured out
yeah.
exactly what the right thing is to do.
Yeah,
And so there you can kind of define that in a way. And every
exactly.
experience is new and unique. And I think in a way you're lucky, because you're one of a very few number of titles when you were launching on the VR storefronts, and the people are excited about the Viver. When they bought it, they wanted to play games with it. You've got the best. I think the best consumers are the ones that are the early adopters for technology. They're by far the most forgiving and the most like invested. They want you to succeed.
Yeah, extremely excited too.
Yeah, you were. I think that was a brilliant move, especially when you did it to get into VR.
Yeah,
Are you still
yeah.
excited about VR?
Probably not as much anymore. So, oh yeah, to finish the arc about Budget Cuts,
Oh yeah,
the demo was extremely successful, but then the full game I think was slightly less successful, because then VR had moved a lot since the first demo, so then it wasn't as new anymore, and people already played the demo. And then we also had like a bunch of like bugs that were pretty bad during launch. So we had a pretty rocky launch, but it worked really well like after that. It had a good tail to it. So that, yeah, it went really well. And I mean, we're still surviving as a company, and we grew to 10 people full time now. So obviously it went well.
damn.
But yeah, which is pretty, I still can't believe it that somehow there are 10 people working at my company. It's pretty terrifying, but yeah.
That is so cool. This is such a great success story. I love it.
And it's scary.
Oh, it is. I mean, it is terrifying, right? Like, I'm having employees is you watch that burn rate go up, and it's just like I don't know. It's a new kind of stress.
Yeah.
Every time your company grows, you experience a new kind of stress. There's like that new stress when you get just even the first handful of employees. There's that new stress when you hit 15 employees. It just never ends. It's just like it's like exercising a muscle. You just become more and more used to the stress, I think.
Yeah, I suppose. But for me, I've sort of like sworn off anything business related. So I'm just like I'm not going to deal with salaries or anything. I'm just gonna work on the game. So
Are you all working on one game right now?
so we recently released Budget Cuts 2, and now we're working on a patch for Budget Cuts 2, adding some features and stuff as well. And we're also working on a game called Garden of the Sea, which is like sort of like a cozy gardening and hanging out with creatures game. TM. I don't know if that's a genre. But yeah, so we're working on 2 VR games right now.
That's awesome. So
Oh,
okay.
and also the PSVR release of Budget Cuts.
Got it, the port. So did you like split people into different teams? I think one of the harder things for studios, indie studios especially, is how do you maintain cohesion? How do you make everybody feel like they're on the same, working at the same company when they're working on different projects? That's a problem.
I feel like it works pretty well because we're all in the same room and we are all kind of switching back and forth between the projects, sort of depending on need. So pretty much all of us have been on Budget Cuts now because we were so close to release. So now we're sort of like facing back to working on Garden of the Sea, as well as the last bits of Budget Cuts. But both of us are, or all of us are, both teams are sort of shuffling members back and forth every now and then, and we're always like hanging out together. So I don't think we've ever had that feeling of feeling torn by the different projects. Yeah.
Do you ever get friction where people wish they were working on a different project? They're like, oh, I don't want to work on Budget Cuts anymore. There's a new game. Why am I not cool enough to be in the new game? Do you?
Yes.
Oh,
I don't know how much that actually occurs, but I do know that I'm one of those problematic people. Like one of the issues is that, or issues, I don't know how much of it is an issue or if it's just bad communication. It's how do you decide who makes big decisions, right? We've always had this really bottom up rather than top down way of approaching things, which I think has both positives and negatives, right? The positive side is that everybody feels involved. They can actually have a say about everything. They can make decisions about what they're working on and suggest things to others, and try to steer everything in a direction that they want the company to go and the project to go. But the downside of that is that everything is sort of up for debate. Everything is questionable. Everything is something you can talk about and discuss, about. And what can happen then is that you can often get into long arguments about stuff, and then whoever argues for the longest or has the most energy to do that will quote unquote win the argument. So we've had a few instances like that, or at least I personally have, which have been a bit frustrating. And I feel like, so I have a little bit of an issue of, I had a very, very strong burnout at the end of Budget Cuts 1. And that heavily affected my stance toward Budget Cuts as a game and project. So it made it really difficult for me to want to work on it, right? Yeah. But yeah, but we sort of had to work on it because it's our biggest IP at this point, and it would sustain the company and all of those things. So it makes sense to work on that.
Yeah, I had no idea you were that big of a company, to be honest. I'm actually really seriously impressed. Did you grow organically? So you were kind of tired how many people were you at the end of the first Budget Cuts?
Let's see, we were 5 or 6 people, I think, plus 2 freelancers.
Okay.
I could be a bit wrong. I think that's around those numbers we have.
Okay. And then did you kind of slowly scale, or did you ramp up once you got funding, really quickly because you got funding for Budget Cuts 2, or?
We've been slowly scaling up, yeah. I think most of our hires have been in pairs, so adding 2 more people as we see a need, right? yeah, so that was kind of what we did.
Got it. I have so many questions. How,
Oh,
yeah, well, this is awesome. I mean, it's rare to see, like, you're a continually successful growing business in the indie space over multiple projects, which is actually very difficult. And you've achieved making a studio that is working on multiple projects without a great deal of friction. Because the pain points where studios fall apart. Usually, a common thing in the indie space is you'll see people rally around one game. They get really excited. Maybe somebody is a leader, like probably your lead designer. They make that game. Then it comes time to make game 2. And even if the first game was successful, a lot of times that's in between the first and the second project is when studios fall apart because everybody was really excited to make a specific thing. And once that thing is out, getting everybody to agree on the next thing is extremely difficult. And that's when you see a lot of friction and falling apart. And another pain point comes if you try to have multiple projects, because what you get is people feel resentful. They're like, well, I don't want to be on the B team. I want to be in the A team. I want to work on the thing that's cool. And so you're talking about it like, yeah, and then we just, then we just slowly ramped up. And the way you're describing it, you make it sound really easy, but this is incredibly difficult for most studios, what you've achieved here.
Yeah, I think there's probably been a lot of friction that is invisible to me because I'm part-time there now, so I'm 50% at NeedCorp. And also I don't really like deal with any interpersonal stuff really at NeedCorp. I'm very much like in the development side of things. But I mean, for sure, there has been some friction, but generally we all understand each other. It's more like we don't really put people on projects, as far as I know, and in a way that makes them feel like they're not useful or that they're put on the B team. But so it's more like ideally we'd all work on the thing we want to do, but if we're really clear about we need to work on budget cuts too because A, B, C, D, and so forth, then that kind of makes sense to the people we're talking to. So that's why, and we have people move between the A team and the B team quite a lot. So it's very fluid and it's not really fixed. So yeah, it seems to work really well so far for us. And I don't know if I have a secret recipe for us or why that works, but it's been working pretty well.
That's awesome. So you mentioned you're part-time now. When did that start? When did you kind of back off?
Let's see. So when was that? That was probably when I came back after my burnout from Budget Cuts 1.
Oh, let's dig into that then. So you worked really hard on Budget Cuts 1. At that point, you'd grown the team to 5 people. Yes. You got kind of burnt out. People are always asking what to deal with burnout and what to do after you ship a game.
Yes.
How did you recover? How long did that take? Was it just time?
It's pretty much a lot of time. It's difficult to gauge because in some sense I haven't fully recovered from it either. So it's just asymptotically dissipates sort of. But the more you read about burnout, everybody just says, the best way to deal with burnout is to not get it in the first place, which is oh, okay. So it's just a very difficult thing to get through. Because, I guess it's technically occupational burnout specifically, but
I think
but what happens is that the symptoms are extremely similar to depression, but tied to a specific workplace or a project. And what happens is that I just lost all motivation. I lost any drive to do things in general. I started treating it as it was quote unquote just a day job. I was going there. I didn't care about any discussions about design. I didn't care about any discussions about how to do.
And you're the co-founder for the studio. You're the one that spearheaded this too. That's kind of insane. I don't know.
To me, it doesn't feel very insane.
I guess usually, if there's there was 2 of you at the head of the studio, but usually if the founder is disconnected from the project, the employees are. That makes the employees very stressed out, and so there's a temptation to pretend that everything is fine. For instance.
Oh, gotcha. I think what happened toward the end was that as my burnout started ramping up, we kind of all knew what we needed to do. There wasn't really, that many large scale discussions. It was just, we need to make the final content, and we all have our areas of, expertise and responsibilities, and then we kind of do it, right? And like I mentioned before, we don't really have a very top-down structure. And even though, like, I'm a co-founder, I've never positioned myself in as some sort of authority at the company. I've never done that. So I've always just been one of the employees. That's the way I've been sort of approaching everything.
I see.
And given that everyone else can also have input on stuff, I feel like we've always had that, trying to make everything level in terms of hierarchy. So I think that helped, make it not as bad of someone who is quote unquote higher up.
Yeah, I get it. So you really do have like a truly flat structure, basically.
In theory, yeah, but there's of course also like social shenanigans that makes it not actually flat. But
yeah, that's always a conversation, right? Like a flat structure isn't truly flat. A flat structure is whoever is more popular or has the greatest stamina as far as arguments go. Not necessarily the greatest arguments, just stamina.
Yeah, I think that was a few of the things that got me toward the end, that just hit me where the burnout got bad. Or actually, I think that's what triggered the burnout in the first place, where I got into so many arguments about stuff because I have strong opinions about design, and I cared a lot about the design of A Budget Gets Won. But at a few points, I had long arguments with people, and not to like talk shit about my colleagues. I love them all. But we all have opinions, and then we get into disagreements, and I just got tired of it after a while, and I got too stressed because we had a lot of things to do. So then I started disconnecting from the project, and I started disconnecting from my job. I started disconnecting from all of that stuff. And as someone who sort of, this is toxic and bad, just to say that up front,
sure.
But as someone who judges and values myself based on the work I do, if I'm not excited about the things I do, that's a really bad combination, because that means I'm doing a bad job, and the things I do are like mediocre at best, and I don't feel excited, and I don't value myself at that point, and that spiraled into the burnout and depression. So
yeah, I mean, I'll say a lot of like, I don't think I'm the same way. Like I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but that might be because I have the same problem. Like I love, I mean, I value my work. My work is most of what I do. I spend most of my time working. Like, this is my life, and I enjoy that when it's going well. And when it's not going well, like then the thing that my purpose in life, the thing that I do, like I am a game developer, and so when it's not going well, I feel it too, and that leads to depression, and it leads to me wanting to change the situation.
Definitely. Yeah.
So I totally get it. Shoot, I had so many questions there, and I just got sidetracked.
Oh no.
But I think going back to the flat structure thing, I'm actually a big I think flat structures work really, really well when everybody is senior or on the same level, and also is kind of like respectful of each other. That's very important. My problem with flat structures, and the reason why I actually prefer hierarchies, is with a hierarchy you can have juniors. With a flat structure you can't. For many reasons, right? Like I think it's important to foster the next generation of game developers. I think it's important, like once you reach a point where you're like, I have 10 years experience, I want to help 2 or 3 juniors along. It's important to be able to hire them and train them up, and then someday they leave and they become seniors. Like, this is, like starting other people's careers. So if you do something like there's certain studios that are flat structures that work really, really well, but they only hire very senior people.
Yeah.
And that,
like Valve, for instance.
Valve, I think I can't speak to Valve because they're very large. I don't know them exactly, but I know of other studios that they do kind of do that, especially in the indie space. Especially smaller studios, it's a lot easier if everything is a negotiation, because you have a flat structure. Then that's easier to manage if you have a smaller studio. There's a size where that becomes untenable, where you just need some sort of structure. I believe, like, you can't. 100 people can't all have opinions about how a gun is designed. Like
Exactly.
at some point you have to have ownership over certain things, and that does organically happen even within a flat structure. But I think, like I talk about this a lot with other people, and I think my biggest issue with flat structures versus hierarchy is that you can't anymore foster juniors. You can't raise juniors up through the ranks. You can't bring on people who are junior, because if you do in a flat structure, then it's constantly you get a situation where there's a couple of different ways that can go, and it's always bad. Like.
Gotcha. I think, I mean, we have brought on juniors, and it has worked really well. I don't know, like, I guess this goes into like what is the definition of a flat structure, right? Because again, that comes back to, there's the flat structure in terms of salary, flat structure in terms of decision making, flat structure in terms of, social credit or whatever that would be called for like how much people respect people, and so forth. Yeah. So I think we've probably not had a fully flat structure because that's impossible. So we've had juniors and whatnot, but it has worked really well as far as I know. I don't think there's been any like big issues with that. But yeah, I think there's definitely been some sort of like micro hierarchies within the team and whatnot. But I think it has worked really well for us, at least. But I can't speak as for why, but yeah.
Sounds like everyone there is really chill. So
that is also really crucial because we all like each other.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, like we've always had this thing where we want us to have a good chemistry between everyone. And I think that's probably a big factor as to why all of this works. Like we never, like I think it's more important to have like people you work with that are excited to work on it and that you get along with well and that you can have fun together, right? Like if you could have that, even if they're not as good as someone else you could have hired, like I would much better prefer that than some senior who everybody hates, right? So I think that really helps in, keeping the team together and making things interesting.
Oh, absolutely. For like a million reasons. I mean, you spend so many hours a week. You spend most of your life at your job. You might as well work with people you like. It's
exactly.
And just in general, collaboration is so much better when you get along with the people you're collaborating with. It'll never be. Yeah, I'm all there. I totally get it. So why? Let's go back to you went down to part-time. When did that start?
So that was I don't remember exactly if it was like immediately after my burnout or a bit later. Mm-hmm. But part of my burnout recovery process was to sort of rediscover why I liked making games in the first place. Because that was just gone. I didn't enjoy anything anymore. I just came home, ate food, and eating was like the best thing ever. That was my favorite thing. And then I just went to bed and woke up and went to work again. If I could go to work. Some days I couldn't even go to work. But yeah, so I felt like I was in a deep hole and I just had to take days off. So I think I took a month off in total, and just like, okay, I need time away from this. So during that time, for a while I didn't do much. I was just, I don't know, eating and watching YouTube. That was my activities during that time. But then I started working on my own like indie games and like noodling around with Unity and stuff. And slowly I kind of, got that spark back. I got that excitement back of like, oh, right, making games is fun, it's not just a business churn and a nightmare. So yeah, that sort of helps me get back on track and feel like I'm at home again. Which sounds a bit counterintuitive. Like I got burnt out making games and then I make games in order to recover, which sounds weird, but for me, that's kind of making things is just what I do. Like whether I'm at work or if I'm at home, I just love creating stuff. But what I create and under what circumstance and under what responsibilities matters a lot. So that was the big difference there. So, going into making my own stuff was really exciting again. And I've sort of come to realize that I have to be excited about the stuff that I do. Like that's an incredibly millennial thing to say, but like I can't do work that I hate. I can do it for like a month at most, and then I just die inside. So yeah, that's just become something really important to me, which is why I sort of since then, I continue being 50% because then at Neat, I can focus on the very specific things I can do, which generally is like tech art and shader related stuff. So then I focus more on that when I'm at Neat, which I enjoy much, much more than doing gameplay code these days. And then the other 50%, I do all of my streaming. I do all of my math shenanigans. I don't even know what to call it. I do math animations on Twitter. But yeah, so all of my other efforts have gone into that other 50%, which has been, yeah, it's worked really well. I feel like I have energy again, and I enjoy doing the things I do.
Oh, and I enjoy the things you do too. Like, I don't know what it is that you do exactly. I can't really describe it either, but like the math,
it's really hard.
Those images on the GIFs you make on Twitter are just beautiful. Like, I didn't know math could be that pretty, Freya. That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's why I make them, because math is presented like almost always in such a boring way. I feel like there's a I'm gonna generalize the stereotype now. I apologize for people who don't fall under those stereotypes. But generally, people who are good at math and tech or stuff like that generally kind of only do that, and then they're bad at art and sometimes bad at design too. Mm-hmm. And then you have people who are good at art or like good at presenting stuff and good at making things pretty. They are generally not interested in math or techie stuff. So then you have these like two camps, and like one of them can make math stuff and draw some pictures and do math. The other group can make things really pretty, but they just like hate math. They just remember it as this boring thing in college or whatever. So given that, there's not a whole lot of overlap in that Venn diagram of people who can make pretty math animations, which is sort of what I realized when I started making these things, that they resonate so much with people, like way more than anything I've ever done before. Because people are like, oh, so that's how sine and cosine works. Why were you not my teacher in high school? So
is there an end goal with it? Well, the other side of this is like, yeah, nobody does this, but because and it's super cool, because you're like a math influencer. I saw that on your Twitter, and that's true. Like you're yeah. I still don't really like have it wrap my mind around what an influencer is, but I get it. You stream, you show people cool stuff, you make entertainment, and you make entertainment around math, which is borderline impossible, but somehow you're doing it. Do you have an end goal in mind, or are you just doing this because it's fun and it's like a thing you can do? And
so I think it like came together with several things at the same time, sort of. I had been working on a plugin in Unity that sort of made recordings of stuff, so I could record videos or whatever. And I added a bunch of features to make things look extra good. I added like quote unquote real motion blur or temporal super sampling, if you want to be fancy about it. Uh-huh. So I added that to that recorder, and then I started like doing some tests with like small animations, and I noticed that animations look super smooth if you have that sort of motion blur between the frames. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, oh, I kind of want to do like geometric animations. That would be super cool. And then I started working on like a vector graphics library. So then with these two things, like making math animations was just kind of the natural thing for me to try out. So I started doing that, and it was supposed to be just a simple showcase for the vector library to do this like sine and cosine animation. But yeah, that tweet just exploded of people who were like, oh, fuck, this is how it works. Yeah, it just seemed like this simple animation. I didn't even use words to explain it. I just said sine and cosine, drew some lines, and then that's it. And people just got it. So then I felt like, okay, so many people resonated with this. I've never seen such a response to any tweet I've ever done of people who were just like getting something, like getting a concept across that way. Uh-huh. So then I sort of started doing more and more things with that, and partially because I think it's really fun. Like I think math is beautiful, but that's because I get it. Uh-huh. You need to get to some point to understand what is beautiful about it, right? So as for like an end goal, I think right now I'm mostly doing pretty things on Twitter. I think that's my end goal. Whether that's explanatory or educational math stuff. I sometimes do art as well using math, but I have plans for writing a book about math, and specifically like aligning it towards game developers. So like doing a like online book with math animations all over, because things that are visual are actually interesting, instead of a textbook that's just text. So yeah, I have plans for doing that. And I've started writing the first chapter, so or one of the chapters. So my plan is to write a chapter. I think I'm going to go for trigonometry as the chapter, and do that fully, do animations, and try to explain things in a very clear and concise way. And then my idea is that I'm going to release that first chapter for free, and then I'm going to do like a push for funding through my Patreon, and then do the rest of the chapters. And then release that for free as well. So it's more like it's funded by Patreon, but it's going to be free in the end. Yeah, I think that's my vague plan. I haven't fully nailed down everything yet, but I have written a long index of all the things I want to cover. And yeah, I think because I feel like I can do it, right? I have evidence on Twitter now, given the response, that I'm in a position where I can make math intuitive and interesting to people. And so there's a big opportunity to actually do something that's useful to people. And also something I enjoy doing, because that's important to me. So yeah, I think there's something missing there, because I get so many people asking me what math do I need to know to make games? And I'm like, well, I mean, vector math is good, and so trigonometry and knowing matrices and spaces can be useful and stuff like that. And then I'm like, oh, neat, do you have a book to recommend? And I'm just like, no, I don't, because the books that I've seen are so technical and so dry and so programmer centric that it hurts me. It's frustrating when you're when you're excited about math, it's so incredibly useful and powerful and neat to use in games, but then all the content you can recommend people it just looks boring and doesn't convey the usefulness, doesn't convey the beauty of math and all of that. So I feel like there's actually, you can actually do that. And yeah, so that was a long rant.
No, I'm into it. I love how passionate you are about this. This is really amazing. I still have a million questions. I think I'm an entrepreneur. I started a studio. You are too. You co-founded a studio. I'm curious why you decided to go the route of having Patreon, basically make it free and then get money through Patreon, as opposed to perhaps making a class and selling it through Masterclass or something like that, putting your work behind a paywall. Have you considered that? Is there, are you just applying open development processes that you're used to and that you enjoy to this new venture, or?
I think, so I think for me, monetizing the stuff that I do is sort of just a necessity. I need it in order to pay rent, right? Or get new gear for streaming or whatever. And ideally, in an ideal world for me, I wouldn't have to worry about money, and I could just release everything I do for free, whatever games I make, whatever math shenanigans I do. So that's sort of what I would like to do. But of course, that's not possible because living is not free. And there are different routes you can go. Like you mentioned, you could do a paywall and all of that. But for me, that is, I feel like it's a good way to do it in some regards, but in some regards not. Because I love being able to be like, hey, here's the thing I made. Go consume it, Go have at it and do the things you want to do with it, right? And giving things away for free, there's that's really people love that. It's nice to have free content, but of course the problem is funding them. How do you fund stuff that's free? But I think going through Patreon could work for me as for funding. So I'm hoping it can grow into something that's sustainable, but it's of course going to take a lot of work. But I think something as useful as math and something so ubiquitous, I think it's morally a good thing to release that for free, And that's just why I want to do that. No, I could probably like earn more money if I had a paywall or whatever, or Masterclass or Udemy or whatever I would do. But yeah.
Okay. How do you? You're basically working 2 jobs now, though, right?
Yes.
Are you feeling the stress from that? Are you concerned that might burn you out again, or?
I don't think so. Right now I'm sort of treating NeetCorp as, a regular job. for the most part, I'm not really involved in design processes anymore. I'm not super involved in any like big decisions like that. So I kind of mostly, it feels more like a freelance for NeatCorp now than, working, as a core member of some team. So I feel like it works pretty well. And of course, I also have to do it because I need money.
Yeah.
And all of my streaming stuff is not getting me even close to that amount of money. But yeah, so I still do that, and I still really enjoy doing that stuff. And I still hecking love my colleagues and everything. So that's, yeah, I think it works really well. And there's, of course, like a risk of burnout. But as from the time that I spend at NeatCorp, I kind of have very strict hours now. I sort of, not like counting them every day, but I try to keep that very strict. I don't do any of that work when I'm at home or after work hours. So I think that, helps me retain a healthy balance there. And then as for my other stuff, I do streaming, and that's pretty taxing in general because you have to like be, think about code while also being social and interesting. And it's a weird combination of things you need to do. But yeah, so that of course is taxing, but it's also a bit more flexible.
Yeah. So why do you?
Yeah,
God, I have so many questions still. So like the streaming, did you start out streaming and then start? What's the order of operations here? Like when did you first start putting GIFs on Twitter? What do you is there a thing that you consider your primary thing? Like is your primary goal Patreon? Did you start out Twitch streaming and then get a Patreon? How did you start becoming an influencer?
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. How did you go from zero to influencer? And was there a strategy or a goal in mind, or did that just kind of organically happen?
So, I mean, I do have some like high-minded goal of like, it would be really nice if I could be totally independent and do indie games on my own, right? That's sort of what I would like to do. So I think that has been like a goal for me, a very like long-term goal. I don't even know when or if it's going to happen. But so that's sort of been in the back of my head for a long time. And then I started streaming because I wanted to work on one of my indie games again. The one that I mentioned earlier, Flowstorm. NeatCorp like abandoned that project, and then I picked it up again and rewrote it and made it into my own thing.
That's that little spaceship thing, right? That if I recall, yeah, that game's cute.
Yeah, it's a very strange game. But yeah, so that's what I picked up on, and I did stream like a really long time ago at like livestream.com before Twitch and whatnot. So I just remembered that, and I remembered it was a pretty good way to keep motivated. Like when you're put like you're sort of on a stage, right? Like you have to perform, and even though people might have you on a tab and not really focus on you, it feels like you have 30 people when it says 30, right? So then you get this like push for you need to do things at all times. You can't procrastinate at all, unless you're having like conversations with chat or whatever. But that's engaging to people. So
I go back and forth on streaming while developing because like. You can't sit down and think deeply about things or do high-level structural stuff, like you kind of want to you do things quickly and you get to the things that look coolest rather than the things that really need to be done.
I used to have that problem, but then I found a solution that worked pretty well. So I've had like several like occasions where I've done streaming before. I did stream for a little while when I was at NeatCorp working on Flowstorm. And then I run into that issue like hardcore because I was just like, okay, I'm streaming. This needs to be entertainment. I need to make this as fancy as possible. So I'm just going to work on the pretty things and then just kind of ignore the underlying systems or whatever, which is bad, like you mentioned. Like what happens is that you start just doing all the shallow stuff and the underlying stuff is just garbage. Nothing is standing on anything. It's just cardboard taped together.
It's also like for the
worse than actual games.
It's also just like the lower level stuff. You just need some time to sit and literally think in silence. At least I do. Like I can't talk through it when I'm thinking about some of the lower level stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. But what I found that worked pretty well was that I think for me it wasn't really that I couldn't talk about it. It was more like I felt that it was boring and I shouldn't talk about it because it's boring, right? And to some extent, I do need some. Sometimes I also need like some headspace where everything is kind of calm and I don't need to react to things people are typing. It can be pretty stressful sometimes. But what I started doing that helped a lot was I I started getting really verbose. Wait, is there a good version of verbose? I feel like verbose has negative connotations.
I don't know.
Uh,
Wordy, descriptive. You started talking
descriptive is
through
good.
your. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. There you go.
So basically what I started doing was that I would start kind of rubber ducking myself at all times. So like if I'm working on some system, I always talk about what am I thinking. I just kind of like just gush out all the things in my head. And that kept things interesting. Like even though I'm working on something quote unquote uninteresting, it can become interesting by like talking about, what is the process of doing something like this? How do you make an undo system? What are the options and all of that stuff, which I have done on stream. And that was kind of fun and exciting to like, everybody sort of joined in on this journey of doing some weird system that I'd never done before. And it worked really well. So I think in terms of like streaming as entertainment, working on games is you can do it. It's just kind of exhausting because you need to talk at all times. But it definitely works. And for me, at least, it was like it kept me going in a really nice way. And like on top of that, you also like, streaming is social. You start interacting with people, you get to know people, and we start getting regulars who are there at all times. And I have no idea how they fit that into their schedule, but they're always there, and it's lovely to see. And yeah, so you start building this community, and yeah, it's really fun. Like I enjoy it so much at this point.
Yeah, I go back and forth on it a lot because I don't get that much done compared to you, I think, but I do. It helped. I thought it was the most valuable for me back when I was starting out in Klein and I was a solo developer. Like, just finding the motivation to work more after work. It's really easy to slack off, and there was just like I needed to grind out some stuff, and it is so helpful to know that people are watching you and stuff, and it is fun to build the community. So I definitely see the upsides. I definitely see that it is still like work though, like it's being social is draining, at least for me. Like, yeah, like, and working and being social at the same time is, sometimes I shut down the stream and I'm like, wow, I need a nap. Like it is actually surprisingly draining.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. There's something about like being educational as well that drains me. I noticed that when I've like given like courses, class or given classes and stuff, like I don't know, like even just giving a class after that, I have a headache, I'm really tired, and I feel like I can't focus on anything. It's just like, I'm just dead after that. And that happens so often after streams where I'm just like absolutely exhausted. But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, but you enjoy it. This is awesome. So how long? I won't keep you much longer. I know this has been going on quite a while.
No, I can go for another hour or something.
Oh, don't say that. We probably shouldn't go that long. But
or we can do this again at some point.
We should definitely do another one. How long have you been streaming? What'd you say?
Oh, I think a little more than a year at this point.
About a year. Okay.
A year and something.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. So, all right. Yeah, we should end it here. And I want to have you back before you, right before you launch your book. Do you think that's going to be a while, or how long do you think that's?
What is that going to be?
Oh God, did I ask the wrong question?
I have no idea, to be honest. I think what I'm going to start doing is like I mentioned, I'm going to release a single chapter and then do that, just go public with that chapter and then sort of do a funding push through my Patreon. I think that's my goal right now. And part of why I go with Patreon instead of Kickstarter or like GoFundMe or something is just I have no idea how long it's going to take. And I have no idea how much would be sustainable. But with Patreon, it's more predictable for me because it's a per month thing. And people stick around for quite long, which is really good. So I think that's more sustainable. So even if it takes a long time, I do have the funds to be able to do it, right? Whereas a Kickstarter is kind of scary because you get this like lump sum and they're just like, oh, I have no idea what I can spend or how much I can do per month, or it feels a bit more unreliable. And then once that's up, there's like no more money. Whereas on Patreon, it feels like there's more safety to it. But the downside with Patreon is that people are probably going to hesitate more to support you because it's per month and maybe they just want to give a one-time sum or whatever. But we'll see how it goes. It's kind of an experiment because like I have no idea if people are going to support me through Patreon for a project like that, especially when I'm doing so many other things than that math book.
Well, do you think
Yeah.
that's one of the things I thought Patreon might make sense for you, right? Because you can have people give you money and you're like, what this money funds is this stuff I do. And the stuff I do is this list. I'm working on this book. Also, I do these awesome Twitter GIFs and I do, you just list out all the things you do and people can pay you each month. And it's just like every month you just give a digest of what you did. And I think that works really well it seems to me like you're somebody who just wants to follow your muse, just wants to do what's most exciting to you in the moment. And so there might be months where you work more on the book and more where you don't. And so that totally makes sense to me. Is it possible to set up something like a PayPal so people can just tip you, like a tip jar of some sort?
I have that. Let's see. I guess people have donated through Stream, but I also have a PayPal. I just never link it to people, I suppose.
Yeah. I guess I'm just like mildly curious how influencer stuff works because you mentioned I do think it's weird in Patreon that you can't just give somebody money. Like at one point I wanted Alan Hazelden to buy a game and I'm like, I just need to send you the money to buy this game. And I realized I couldn't. Like there's you can't just send money one time, which is really weird. I don't get it.
Yeah, I feel like there are like upsides and downsides to it, right? But I think the predictability of Patreon makes a lot of sense. I think if you could do one-time donations on Patreon, I think what would happen is that you would get more people donating just once, and I think you will get less people who support you long term, right? So there would be a little trade-off there where you lose long-term support because there is a feature of just donating once, rather than having like, oh, let's just do $1 per month or whatever. So like I think that's a big advantage with Patreon where it is guaranteed to be, not guaranteed of course because people can like leave your Patreon, but I think it's sustainable. Even though growth is harder.
Yeah, I dig it. Well, this is awesome. I can't wait to have you back again, Freya.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me.
All right, this has been Gwen Frey and Freya Holmer, and you've been in the Dialogue Box. All right, and that's where we'll cut it. Now we can talk to the chat.
Hello, chat.
Hello, chat. That was great. You were great.
Oh, thanks.
You were fascinating. Like, I love everything you do. Like,
thank you so much. And then congratulations on your release on Kina. How do you pronounce it? Kine?
It's just Kine, yeah.
Yeah, that seems wild. Like, how many platforms did you release it on?
5. Yeah. The Stadia one was the last one. That was back in November. That's actually still ongoing. I've still got like some patches to fix there. Just for... shipping a game never ends. Like, it never ends anymore. I miss the days when you just shipped and you were done. Now there's always like some kind of ongoing stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, that's really cool. But yeah, let's see. Did you have any questions from chat? I feel like I might have missed a few things.
Let's see. Hey guys, let me scroll up a bit. What is going on here?
What is going on here?
What ways does it go bad to have juniors in a flat structure? Oh, I can elaborate. Like, so say you want to build a studio with the idea that everybody has equal say. If you bring in people who are junior, obviously they'll bring up something. You'll be like, well, in my experience, we shouldn't do what you just said. We should do this other thing. And then it comes down to if that junior doesn't have a certain amount of self-awareness, obviously there's expertise matters in some ways. You know what I mean? Like, it can become awkward. And you also get a thing where you get the opposite problem. People come in as juniors. They don't know when they're promoted. They don't know when they're allowed to start having opinions. Yeah. They tend to be really shy. Like, you can see both sides of that coin. I think there's something... I started out working in a much more traditional structure where you've got like juniors and they have levels, and you've got your leads and you've got seniors, and you kind of like know where everybody fits within that structure. And that means it makes it so that a junior is empowered. They can be like, this is my opinion, I think we should do this. And everyone else can be like, hey, I had that same idea 5 years ago, and here's how we implemented that idea, and here's how it didn't work, and here's why I don't think we should do it again. And you know that the lead can veto things. Like, it just makes everybody very aware of where they are in a hierarchy.
I think oh, sorry, I didn't
no, go ahead.
I think for me it's a what do you call it? It's an optimization thing of taking shortcuts, sort of. Like having people who are senior who can make decisions without having a long argument with a junior or someone in general, that makes things speed up so much faster. If you have a long discussion about, oh, how should this and that mechanic work, then someone who's higher up can just make that decision and then say, this is what we're doing, end of discussion, sort of. And I guess the advantage of being a senior is that you have more experience and you have likely better opinions about that than someone who just started. Rather than having that long conversation.
And it's way more important on bigger teams, especially when you have multiple disciplines. So like say you're a junior designer and the senior programmer is like is implementing something a spec that you came up with, like at Irrational where there's like 80 people, right? This becomes a much bigger deal. So you're a junior designer, you design a spec, you give it to a programmer, and the programmer says they're going to do it in a different way and they've got reasons, right? And now if there was no lead designer to go to, the junior designer would probably just kind of like deal with that. It would be weird. But now the junior designer can go to their lead and be like, here's what a senior programmer says. Here's what my goal was. What do you think we should do? And then the lead designer can trump everything. And it becomes much more important to have a structure like that when you've got a much bigger team.
I think for us, we sort of have that organically. We don't have that like strictly. So I think in general, people are like feel comfortable talking to people who are, senior, but don't really have like a veto power, but they're still senior, and we can still, sort of realize that, people who know more should probably have a bigger say in a few things, right? But it's just more implicit, I guess, which might be worse than having an explicit hierarchy. But yeah.
I think what you guys do works really well, specifically in a situation where everybody knows each other, though. I think what you do could not work at Irrational, where people, once your studio reaches a certain size, you don't know the names of everybody on your team. I don't know the name of everybody that worked on BioShock Infinite. I don't know, like I kind of know like a face to a role. I know that person does this or is in that department, but I don't know them. And so it becomes a lot harder to collaborate, you know what I mean? And so that's when the structure becomes far more important.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
I feel like you have to do that as you scale up. We had problems with that in, we realized that there was like there was a certain threshold where you can't keep up with all Slack conversations anymore. Like as your team grows, there's a certain limit where there's just too much happening and you can't keep up with everything. So there's no way for you to be in the know of everything going on. So they need this sort of hierarchy where information has to be compartmentalized in some ways, right?
I forgot. You passed another threshold point that I forgot to bring up. The awkward moment when you can't all go to lunch together as a team anymore.
Oh.
That's like a big weird cultural thing. Like if you started out small and for years everybody always went to lunch together, and then all of a sudden you reach a point where it's like, I know it happened at one studio. I co-founded the Molasses Flood. I went through a very similar arc to you. Worked really hard, burned out, started my own studio, eventually went indie. But like the point when we got the funding for the next project and we ramped up, and it's kind of, we then had two lunch groups. There was the old guard, and then there was the new hires. And obviously they were like 5-10 years younger. So we just kind of like separated. And it was really weird watching that happen at a studio where it's like, but we always all go together, but we can't have a table of 12 people. That's really inconvenient for lunch every day.
Yeah, during lunchtime, that just doesn't work. And there's a lot of places that don't allow you to book tables during lunch. So, yeah.
All right, let's read what people are saying. When you have a flat structure and you introduce someone new, they have to like the group and the group has to like them, or else they'll end up sidelined, and that is probably worse for juniors joining seniors. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of... It depends.
And yes, agreed. I would say that that's very true. As for the senior developers, has to know how to delegate work to junior developers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like sometimes when people are new, it can be kind of scary to like take decisions on your own. So then I think it's really important to, have a clear goal, and then having a senior who can tell you, this is the important thing we need to work on, and this is the tools you can use to do that, and let us know if you need help with anything or whatever.
Yeah.
Like being like friendly and approachable, and like I think that's really important to give guidance.
Well, there's that. There's another side of this too. That's like the first junior you hire does not alleviate any of your workflow at all. Like
it's a bit of a if they're really junior, if they're like right out of like some school or something, it can be a lot of work. Yeah,
you're basically investing, right? You're like for the next 6 months, it's going to be on top of what I'm thinking of something like, okay, you've architected a system. You need to take on a bigger role, or you need to make the system bigger. You need to hire a junior to help you in some way. So you hire a junior, but for the first 6 months, you're just training them on your system, getting them used to your stuff. There's times when it would just be so much faster for you to just do it, but you can't. You have to make them do it so that they learn, and it's painful at first, but then you get over that hump, and eventually it all works out. Just like, it takes a bit. Hiring,
for sure.
And then once you're up to like 2 people and they start training each other and stuff, I don't know. I've watched a couple studios grow. One of my first gigs was out in San Francisco, and I watched a studio grow from, I was the 5th person at the studio, and when I left, we were almost 40. And that was
wow, that's a massive growth.
Yeah. Well, it was intended to grow quickly. It was like a venture capital based thing, but and it is very different when you grow quickly versus slowly. I'm not sure what's better, to be honest. Like, you would think growing slowly is better, but then every person, as soon as they join the team, is you're the new guy for longer, right? And you're also everybody else knows each other super well. Mm-hmm. So that can be kind of stressful. You always feel like you're not in the clique yet. I don't know. At least for smaller teams. Once you get over a certain threshold number of people, it changes.
Yeah, I think for us, we just hide really slowly because we want to be careful of going ahead. We don't want to like get a lump of people, and then it turns out things doesn't work too well, or salary is expensive, and then we're running out of money quickly. So we're kind of taking it slow to make sure that every person we hire fits the team and we get along well. And I think that is super, super important to get along. So that's why we're like prioritizing that so heavily. So that's why we kind of hire slowly in general.
Mm-hmm. Did you always have an office? Because
we got that relatively early. Even when we were just 2 people, we had an office. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. What's it like working?
We shared office with Unity in Stockholm.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that probably helped for a lot for the VR stuff too.
It actually barely helped at all. It was more like we shared the kitchen together. We didn't really talk that much, and the people doing VR wasn't there, so it was kind of like, it was mostly the demo team, but it was neat. Sometimes I went for lunch or whatever. But yeah.
Dude, I went to Stockholm once to visit, like just for a weekend. It's so beautiful out there. I'm so jealous.
It's I don't know. It's a city. For me, it's just default. So I don't know really what to compare it with.
Dude, I would. That's like one of the few cities where I'm like, I could live here. I visit New York, but I could never live there. But I feel like I could live in Stockholm. It feels livable. There's just something about it.
Yeah, my girlfriend has a very similar idea about the whole thing. The person sleeping by me, she moved here to Sweden just a few months ago. To work at Unity, actually. So she's there now, and it's been a long process of her moving from Seattle to here. But yeah, she's always been like wanting to move to the Nordic countries for a long time. So it fit really well.
Yeah, I feel like we should probably go and let her sleep.
She was fine.
She was a real trooper.
I mean, she said that it was fine. So
okay. Sweet.
It's not even late. She's not supposed to sleep. I'm gonna wake her up and tell her to get food. So.
What time is it in Stockholm?
It's currently 6:20.
Oh, that is weird. Oh well, naps. I'm pro nap. It's the weekend. So
sure.
Weird. All right. I think. Do you guys have any more questions? We're probably gonna wrap this up soon.
Let's see. Um, that's a weird spam bot. I've actually never had a spam bot like that.
What is the spam bot? Oh, is it Sortolude?
Yes.
How do I
That
ban
looks very
somebody?
like auto-generated.
How do I ban somebody? I click their name and like I can block them. Is that the same thing?
Are you sure like tell Outfrost to ban them?
Is it we're talking about short and on loot 43 on?
Yes.
Yeah, that doesn't look like a real name. I'm just gonna block and see what happens.
Oh wait, block might block DMs rather
Yeah, that
than
didn't do anything. That's weird. I don't know
Steam
how.
got
See, I actually don't know how Twitch works at all. I just kind of like started doing this one day. The person who got me into this was the Chris Light, who used to co-host the podcast with me, and he just kind of like set up my computer at one point. And to me, it seems like the least user-friendly thing in the world. It's like I have to install this separate application, click a button on that interfaces with like a website. I mean, it makes sense now that I'm in it, but when it was first being explained to me, the general flow, I'm like, why isn't this all just in one app? I don't understand this.
It's very strange, and then there are so many quirks you need to go through, and like, yeah, and you can go like so far with this as well. Like my streaming setup right now is extremely elaborate, and because like working on running, like streaming something from the computer you're working on is generally like, you lose a lot of performance streaming because that takes a bunch of CPU and GPU power as well, right? So it's like, like after all of the time that I've been streaming, I've just slowly upgraded everything. So now it's like, I have this separate streaming computer that is running OBS, and then I have a capture card in that, and then there are like all of the audio gear that I have. It's like, it's very complicated.
Yeah.
You should see all of my cables that I have.
I mean, I should probably, like, if theoretically, so the way this works for the people in the chat is actually Freya's super humoring me because I've never figured out how to get a Hangouts or Skype window to work at the same time as OBS. Basically, anytime I open up OBS, I can't seem to, like, output my webcam anywhere else. So, and I think I could do it if I hooked up this, I had to buy, like, a capture card. I don't know if that would actually help. I had to buy it so that I could capture some stuff from the Switch at one point, and I hooked it up and I got what I needed done for the Switch. So I've definitely got like gear physically next to me that I don't know how to use that could probably fix this whole situation. But
I actually don't know if you can use a capture card on just a single computer. I don't think that's useful as far as I know. It's more like between computers you can do that.
yeah.
But I mean, if you want, there are like hacks you can do that are weird, which I'm guessing you've done before or already are doing. Like you can either, so the problem is that the webcam can only have a single source that is reading from it, right?
Okay.
So then it's like, okay, so where do you want to use your webcam? Do you want to use it in, your Skype or Hangouts or whatever? You can do that if you want, or you can only use it in OBS. So then you want to use it in both. So how do we do that? Well, either you can only use it in your chat application, like in Hangouts, and then in OBS, you also want that feed. So what you can do is you do a screen capture. So you capture, or like a window capture in OBS. So tell OBS to read from that window. Then you crop it to fit your webcam, which is like super janky, but it sort of works. The other option is to have OBS output a webcam stream. So then you can find a webcam that is OBS. So you can, in your chat application, read from the OBS output as a webcam. So like, it's fucky. I don't think there's, like, it's not a good way of doing it, but it works. So yeah.
I might try the second one someday. So far, everybody's humored me, and they'll just like watch my expressions delayed on the website. But I feel is that hard? Is it like weird to talk to know that I can see you and you can't see me? Is this like a weird interview process?
It's a little weird, but I don't see a real-time expression, so it's only like a few seconds after I can see like how, like, were you smiling? Did you like have an angry face? Did you hate me? I don't know. It just counts, like, it's a bit delayed, but it works well.
All right, fair enough. I did not hate you, Freya. You're an awesome guest. I really appreciate you being here. Yeah, I think Do you primarily stream these days? Yeah, mostly I stream the podcast. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing next, Steve. Like you can go back and see like there's been a handful of game dev streams still. A lot of what I'm doing now is thinking is the problem, and like writing stuff in notes constantly, just notes. Can't see that. For like what the next game is, thinking about just everything. A lot of thinking about I try hard not to think about the market, actually. I've kind of stopped. That's the thing that burns me out, is you can get lost in the data, and I have so much data about what games succeed. And because there's this harsh reality in the industry. It's like there are a handful of games that make a shit ton of money, and there's so many games that make less than $100,000 that people have worked on for years.
Which has nothing to do with the quality of the games, which is frustrating.
And you try to like divine, and you can look into it, and I can tell you stats. I've got, because I work, one of the things I do is like my work with a publisher, basically Wings Fund. And so I've got access to stats, and I'll also troll through like not Steam Spy, but the new one that's kind of cool, that's similar to Steam Spy, that uses Boxlighter, and I'll just be like, what genres are successful and things like this. But if you get into that headspace,
Yeah, I mean, you start like making games like a AAA studio, where it becomes like mostly about like mass market appeal rather than, making your own thing. Right?
Or you just, even if you... I can only be motivated if I'm working on the things I want to work on. I'm similar to you in that way.
Yeah, I'm the same. So.
Like, I can't... And one of the reasons I burnt out was because I was trying to make the highly replayable roguelike, multiplayer experience that the market craves. And it's just... I just had no love for the game. And if you don't love the game, then I just can't do it. It just kills you, But yeah, so... Whatever.
Someone linked my streaming setup if you want to see my elaborate streaming setup.
Let me check this out. Let's see here. Holy God. Did you make this? This is a beautiful... Look at... Putting this on so people can see it later.
Well, I want to make things pretty. It's important.
Wow. I mean, your graphs are beautiful. Like your color choices.
That's the setup.
Such a wonderful aesthetic. I don't care about the setup. I'm more interested in your node flow situation here. You can tell you make node graphs for a living. This is or for how you started your career.
I mean, that is what I did with the shade approach. So. Right, someone asked about how I made it, and yes, I made it in Photoshop.
All right. Well, I think I'm gonna go get lunch.
I need to get dinner. Or do I make dinner? I don't think I might have to make dinner, and I think Ashley might be hungry at this point.
She looks like I saw her flipping over. I think it might be time. But thanks for hanging out with me, Freya, and thanks for hanging out with us, everybody in the chat.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking. It was fun, and yeah, I would love to do this again. It would be neat.
We definitely will. I like having people on here multiple times. Mostly because I think it's fun to chart like where you end up next, especially you, because you could be anywhere in like a couple months.
I have no idea where I'm going to be. And right now, like my computer is really bad and crashing, and we've been like our whole community has been like trying to debug what is going on with my computer right now. And my cat's been like super sick and like on the verge of dying, which was hecking scary. So like. Yeah, it's happened a lot. Like a lot has happened now, and I have sort of paused my streaming because of that. Because I need to like, I can sort of start streaming now because finally Thor does not need to be fed manually 8 times a day. So yeah, it's been a lot. So but yeah, I'm sort of looking to roll back my streaming or roll out.
Get back into
streaming again. Get back into streaming. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I'm sort of hoping my computer can actually behave so that I can reliably stream, reliably work on things. But yeah, I have no idea where I'm going to end up, but we'll see.
I look forward to it. All right, goodbye, everybody.
All right, thank you so much, and goodbye, everyone, and thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, no, thanks for being here. It's awesome.
Yeah.